So welcome to the lead session about adapting and showing resilience in the face of challenges. My name is Gab. I am the former National Vice President for Incoming Global Talent for AIESEC in Sweden, but now I'm back home in the Philippines. So to begin, what is resilience? Resilience is the process of being able to adapt well and to bounce back quickly in times of stress. But that's the general sense. There is more to resilience than just that, and these are the different types of those: natural resilience, adaptive resilience, as well as learned resilience. Natural resilience is the type of resilience that you have when you are born. So if you notice children, you would always see them usually, just get back up after literally falling, for example. And as a child, of course, you'd think that it's painful, but even if they go through that pain, they still get back up and continue going on. Something that we lose as we grow up is that quick adaptation or that quick resilient skill of just getting back up even if you get hurt. But that's something that you can learn later on. Adaptive resilience, on the other hand, is something that you have, or something that um, you exhibit when you go through something more harsh, for example. So let's say, kind of an extreme example, but for example, but like when you go through a storm and your house gets damaged, and you're able to get back up to restore it, to fix it, and move on afterwards. So that's adaptive resilience. The last thing is learned resilience. So this is the active development of skills in order for you to understand how to get back up and to actually restore your resilience to the level of your natural resilience when you were a child. So that's what I meant earlier about being able to relearn your natural resilience. So, to before we move on to the rest of the topics, I'd like you to first, of course, understand how resilient you are. So, as other people say, when you are able to identify and measure something, then you can start acting upon it. So first, let's measure our level of resilience. So you can pause the video a little bit for first and answer these 9 questions or 9 statements and rate them as 1 to 5 depending on how much you agree with it. So you can pause it for a minute first and complete the scale. All right. And so once you're done with that, make sure to tally your score. So just a simple sum of all of your answers. And you should be able to see in which area of resilience you are at. So whether it's low or high, it's okay. As I mentioned earlier, it is possible for you to learn to learn to build up resilience. So now that you know where you are, you'd be able to sustain it if it's somewhere in the higher side of the spectrum, or you can keep building skills to keep becoming more resilient if it's on the lower side of the spectrum. There you go. So to continue, so these are the keys to building resilience. I have, I am, and I can. I have is the external support. So we all have different areas in life that allows us to become more resilient in the external sense. So you can note this down as I speak. You can take a quick break, pause it, and reflect on it as well, so that you can be able to visualize it as well. So it'd be nice for you to actually journal this down and to just create a an inventory of the different areas of your resilience skills. So first one is this: who is someone you can rely on and can listen to you without judgment? So the next question is, who is someone you look up to for having failed or gone through shit, but is still successful in your eyes? And lastly is, how do you currently keep life organized? So when you have these things, these are the external support systems that you have. You can have strong relationships, you can have role models, you can have a structure in order to make your life a little more simple and allow you to actually, bounce back quite easily because you already have foundations towards that. Next is I am. So these are your internal strengths. So journal it the same way you did earlier. So personally, what do you know or what do you think you are good at? After that, as we know, there might be some differences in this, in the perception of yourself and others. So, what do other people say you are good at? If you have the time, you can also actually go ahead and contact people that you trust and ask them what they think you're good at. And lastly, something that's a bit easier to look into: what kind of job do you currently have, and what entails being good there? So, just for a quick example, I used to be in a sales job. I was a business consultant in a software as a service company back in January. And although I had some of the skills, of course, what entails being good there is you being able to close deals, right? And to convert. But that wasn't something that I was really particularly good at, and now I know that. But yeah, now a few months later, I moved into a new job as a learning and engagement associate in my current company, and this entails me to actually understand how to create employee engagement initiatives and to build learning and development programs as well. So now that I'm in this new job, I know that I'm actually good at it. So I all have a bit of a more familiarity of what my strengths are, at least in the professional sense. So you can play around that as well. So I am. So I am a person who helps and inspires others. I am a person who cares about others. Or one thing that's very important is for us to acknowledge that we are proud of ourselves. So I am proud of myself. These are some things that I know a lot of people share, but if you have something else, um, like a different interest or a different strength, then that's okay. Acknowledge it, list them down, maybe write down three things that you know you're good at, um, and keep that in mind. So when you understand who you are, when you are aware, or when you are self-aware, you're able to understand how to gauge what to do in order to alleviate or relieve yourself from anything negative. So after that, we look at again, so the external problem solving skills. So these are the methods or the structure into which you use the external support system as well as your internal strengths in order to act upon what's happening to you. So what I'll be showing you is the four-factor approach. So I'll be showing you that through some story. So the first one is stating the fact. So my story will be revolving around our current context, the coronavirus. So stating the facts, the first few cases that were reported around the world started in around January, um, and that did not cause any alarm in the Philippine government. The first case, I believe, that entered the country from an imported case, actually, from directly from Wuhan, was around the second week of February or third week. And again, the government did not play it safe, actually, sorry, um, and did not do anything to halt a possible pandemic. Next up is in March 15th, the Philippines was already put on quarantine. So it started with the northern island. So if you know the geography of the Philippines, there are three main islands. So the northern one, the biggest one, was already put on quarantine. So people were not allowed to go out of the house and are only allowed to do so. One person in a house was allowed to go out just to buy essential items, and flights were already barred, so foreign nationals are not allowed to enter. People were given some allowances to leave and go home, and yeah, so that's March 15th. Now we're uh, March, April, May, June. So now we're 3 months out into the quarantine. A lot of countries have already relaxed and even recovered from the initial spike of cases, and yet we are still here. Our cases are increasing quite rapidly, and it's very scary. Um, but yeah, that was happening throughout. So that was the story of the coronavirus in the Philippines. Now we're gonna look into my story within that time period. Um, as I mentioned earlier, during like the internal strengths, I had a job in January in sales, and I decided to resign on the first week of March, not knowing that lockdown was gonna happen. Um, my resignation was effective immediately because it was taking a toll on my mental health. So I was being aware about like what was affecting me. So I was being resilient to a certain extent at that time. Uh, but then lockdown happened, and I didn't have a job anymore. So financial security became an issue as well. And so things were becoming a bit more challenging, right? I was privileged enough to be living with my family and have people to support me financially. So, in that sense, at least I had some stability. But um, I still had to find a job to make sure that I don't affect them as much as well, because everything was at a standstill. Like nobody was getting the same amount of um, like of income, because a lot of businesses are closed, a lot of people were getting laid off, and so on and so forth. But I try to keep pushing. So I'm gonna place the blame where it belongs. Um, I was partially at fault for not having a job because I resigned right before lockdown, but I also place a bit of a blame on the government for not taking action, as well as our neighboring countries. So, being a developing country is not an excuse, because we have fellow countries at the same economic state, such as Vietnam and Thailand, that did well and have already started opening borders within the country. So, people are starting to have like a close to normal life, or at least have started their new normals. And yeah, so that's me ensuring like I am not taking the entire blame out of my current situation, but I am acknowledging that I have a bit of a hand into where my current state is. And of course, there's the government. Next is to reframe it. Reframing, because like I feel like my life was it was in a very very horrible state because I didn't have a job. I didn't know how I'm gonna get out of like my debt and how I'm going to move forward. So like the debt is rising, and I don't have income to cover all of that. And of course, I needed to make sure that I had my own personal security financially, especially. And I didn't want to put the burden on, even if I'm privileged to have a bit of support from my parents, I didn't want to put everything on them because, like, they've spent so much on me already by supporting me in everything that I did in university and below. And yeah, so I wanted to be independent as well. So to reframe it, although it is bad, like the situation was bad, I resigned at the wrong time, but it's an opportunity for me to look for something that I'm actually really passionate about. Sales was not my thing. It made me feel extremely incompetent and feel like I didn't know how to learn. So I really pushed hard to find something that I actually cared about. And I waited. I gave myself time to do that. So almost every day I was I was in LinkedIn, I was in um, Caliber, which is a local like job search area, like Job Street as well. So these different channels in the Philippines where we could find jobs, and I was just applying everywhere, sending my CV and all of that. So, but I was lucky. I did give my time to do that, and I knew what I wanted to do. I stopped looking for sales positions, and I started looking solely on learning and development opportunities. And here comes a he's not really a colleague, but someone in the AIESEC network who was an intern at Tata Consultancy in the Philippines. He was now the HR, the regional HR, to be specific, the regional recruitment manager of the company that I'm in. And he contacted me and said, like, hey, we have this new position as a learning and engagement associate. Would you be interested to apply? And of course, like the position being aligned to what I wanted to do in the future, I said yes. So we had a call. We talked about the position, what is gonna entail. Talked about AIESEC, and so on and so forth. And I got into the process. Sent him my CV as well, just to double um, check everything. Of course, he already had my LinkedIn profile as well. I had my interviews with the HR manager as well as the regional HR director in the following days. And I think within a week, I was hired. And I was in it to start in like 2 weeks, I think, after that. So, May 4th, that's about 1.5 months or so after lockdown and after uh, leaving my job, and I'm back and employed and able to be productive of my time again. So I can external problem solving skills, I can ask for help. I did ask for help actually from my friends. Before lockdown, I met up with one of them, and he was also in the field of OD, so or organizational development. So this field actually in the Philippines is hard to access if you don't have connections. And next is I can solve problems. I found a way to find a job, even if things were a bit tough, and I can seek out good relationships. So I did muster up all my courage to, to ask friends and to ask acquaintances to help me relieve of my problem at that time, which was looking for a job, and amidst a pandemic. So, it's quite difficult. So I am, and I can. Make sure that you have a solid external support system. Identify them. You don't have to have them all in one place, but just make sure that you know where to access them. I am are your internal strengths. If you don't know who you are yet as much, reflect on it. Reflect on it every day. Um, just look into what your strengths are. Um, take personality tests or strengths. Do the strengths finder. Look at those things so that you can identify what you're good at. If you see that the results are similar to what you think you're already a bit adept at, then you can look into it further. And I can. So, yeah, state the facts, right? And then look into like how the entire situation is happening, reframe it, and look into how you can solve it from there. So, resilience. Building resilience is possible because it's a skill. It's a skill that you can build up, it's a skill that you can learn. So, these are just some of the tips that you can use in order to do that. So, number one is to cultivate optimism. So, try to be more optimistic about things. So, be more be more grateful for things. Express gratitude. Number two, shift your focus. Um, Especially you guys right now. You guys are in Sweden. It's very easy to get desensitized to the world problems while you're there. Um, so use that to your advantage and shift your focus. If you can turn off all of your social media, do it. A social media detox will really help you out in that as well sometimes. Number three is to process difficult feelings. So something that you can do, very simple actually, is for 15 minutes, just journal for about 3 to 4 days. Write down what you're feeling, and then from there, you'd actually be able to process like, okay, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through, and this is what I can do to relieve myself of that. So there you go. Next one is to connect with people. You have friends. um, you are lucky to be able to meet friends there, but of course you also have your family and other friends back home. If you're not from Sweden, try to connect with them as well. Personal connections are everything. These can really help you out in becoming a bit more resilient as well, and to build your external support system. And lastly, of course, is to be present. So be mindful and just acknowledge what is happening currently. So yeah, like a lot of psychologists and a lot of coaches and counselors will always tell you to be more mindful of things. So it's very true though. Like, just that's why it's also nice if you do a quick detox, social media detox, that can quiet down the noise, figurative noise of the world, and just look into what else you can do, what's happening today, what's happening in your life, what else is going to happen in the future. I know that it's very uncertain for a lot of us, of course, because the world is at a standstill basically. But of course, there will be a future. This will end. At some point, it may be in 6 months or more, but it will end some way, one way or another. So, visualize that as well while you're experiencing the today. So, thank you so much for listening to this lead session about resilience. I hope that you learned a little bit of how you can build it and how you can move forward with the current situation. I know that some of you, although you have some of movement or freedom to go around, um, a lot of us are still experiencing some anxieties towards what's happening around the world and the inactions and injustices also happening. So um, take the time to reflect on that, and hopefully that we can surpass it together as well. So yeah, thank you again for listening. If you'd like to connect with me, you can ask the AIESEC team how to reach me. But you can also you can also find me on LinkedIn. My name is Angelo Gabriel Holiero. Uh, and yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day or night or afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. And good luck. And I hope that you're able to get back up in whatever you're experiencing.